Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord, and welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we have 3 new cards that we need to talk about. A new Produce SSR for Tenka, Support SSR for Meguru, and Support SR for Madoka. Keep in mind that Tenka and Meguru are permanent cards, meaning they will be added to the potential reroll list as well as the Platinum Gacha and any further gachas once her banner is over. So don't worry if you miss out on her now, she'll come back around eventually. Starting things off, we have Tenka. Closing in on the end of the SSR5 sets, aside from Straylight and Nocchill, Tenka arrives to repeat being a visual vocal unit for Alstroemeria. In this case, she's a visual card initially, and evolves into a vocal unit later. Tenka 5 focuses on being an almost purely defensive unit, building up heals and shields for your team, while trying to build up memory gauge with her passives. She's not incredibly insane, but feels hard to consider with Tenka 4 being such a dominant card in visual Alstroemeria. To compare her a bit with Tenka 3, or Idol, if Tenka 3 was all about damage, Tenka 5 is all about utility. She trades off dealing as much damage through her appeals by applying much more healing and damage cuts, while also building up memory gauge on the side. Tenka 5 is a clear winner over Tenka 3 in vocal Alstroemeria, unless you care nothing about defenses and need pure offense. There's certainly a niche for Tenka 5, it's just hard to say if visual or vocal Alstroemeria necessarily need her. I think she has a much better place on vocal Alstroemeria, but if you already have Tenka 3 maxed out, it might be hard to use Tenka 5 right now. Her roles are Buffer, Tank, Healer, and she can boost your memory gauge, and I slightly recommend pulling for Tenka. She's a bit of an interesting pick overall, so that's why I would say a slight recommendation, and she's also a permanent unit, so she'll be around. Tenka's initial skill is a visual 3.0 appeal that applies a mental damage cut of 10% for 3 turns. This links into a mental 15% regen for 4 turns. At max, she gains access to a vocal 4.5 appeal that has a mental damage cut of 20% for 3 turns and links into the same mental 15% regen for 4 turns. Tenka's 1-star passive is a memory gauge 20% boost as well as a mental damage cut of 30% that requires you to already have an active mental damage cut buff. This has a 20% chance to activate once. She also gains a plus 50 visual uncap at 1 stars. At 2 stars, Tenka gains 2 passives. The first being a memory gauge boost of 25% and a mental damage cut of 50% as long as it's before turn 3. This has a 40% chance to activate once. The second passive is a vocal visual 10% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or later. This has a 50% chance to activate twice. At 3 stars, she gains a vocal visual plus 100 uncap. At 4 stars, a vocal plus 100 uncap. And notably, her event unlock is actually a plus 100 to visual uncap, though that one may be a little less necessary than the vocal ones. Her memory appeal, once maxed out, is a maximum vocal 2.0 appeal that scales based on how high your mental is, and links into the same vocal 2.0 appeal scaling based on how high your mental is. This is the exact same memory appeal as a Mana 5. For the support recommendations, vocal, SP, and a little bit of mental. Chiyuki continues to be a cornerstone support for the build, and the introduction of new vocal Amana stands to assist in building Tenka even taller than ever before. Cards like Fuyuko and Juri help round out the build, and cards like Kaho can help build up your mental, since that's something you'll also want to gain with Alstroemeria. For the other supports, if you lack Tenka 4 and want recommendations for a visual build, a lineup similar to this will help get you started. My guess is we'll see a gacha visual Chiyuki support soon enough, so she can take the place of any card here as you see fit. As for team recommendations, much like the Amana 5 review, this team should feel very familiar. Like clockwork, you can more or less replace Tenka 3 with Tenka 5, assuming you max out Tenka 5. While she lacks the damage Tenka 3 can output, she makes up for it through consistency through health. Stack up those passives, build up those shields and heals, and let them have it. As for the popular supports, gauging off of what's been happening in Grade Fest 6 and Grade Fest 7, some popular combinations include Toru 2 and Madoka 2 for natural buff gaining as well as dodge, which help plays into the high health playstyle. Choco 5 and Kaho 5 for interest manipulation, as well as AoE damage in the case of Kaho, which can be absolutely complementary to the build. And then Asahi 3 and Mei 3 to help build up buffs as well as more AoE damage. Overall, Tenka as a center earns an A. This memory appeal is relatively boring, but it can get the job done. It's a vocal 4.0 in the best conditions, which should be pretty easy for Tenka to set up through link appeals or through cards like Chiyuki 3. It's actually stronger than Chiyuki 3's memory appeal, so it's the de facto strongest memory appeal that vocal Alstroemeria has access to currently, tied with Amana 5. As a unit, she earns anywhere from a B+ to an A-. Really, the only thing that keeps Tenka relatively important and gives her that A- is the possible 45% memory gauge she can deliver within the first 3 turns. Outside of that, you only have access to small damage cuts if you run her outside of Alstroemeria, and significant self-healing when in unit. She doesn't offer a lot of offensive utility with her passives directly, but the memory gauge boost is still real nice, and helps make sure that you may even get a second memory appeal in one run. She's a little bit of a weird card, but appreciated nonetheless. Next we have Meguru. In a pleasant surprise for a couple of reasons, Meguru is the latest Illumination Star support on the permanent list. She also gets to be on the relatively short list of seasonal without being limited, which is fantastic. Meguru frankly has a lot of positives to her, and marks a clear point where she could be better than many older limited supports. She's very specialized for Illumination Stars, so keep an eye out for this card. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, and she has 3 unique support skills. The first is Vocal Mastery SP, reaching +16 at level 75. Next she has Unit Mastery Stamina, reaching 3 at level 75, and Unit Mastery Vocal, reaching +6 at level 70. Her support appeal does scale, starting at a Vocal 3.0, and working its way up through buffing, rather than through damage. It stays at 3.0 even at level 80, but you gain a Vocal 5% buff for 3 turns at level 60, increasing by 5% every 5 levels, becoming a Vocal 25% buff for 3 turns at level 80. Her TFD idea is Vocal, and her Insight token for Grad is Dance. Meguru's initial passive is a Vocal 30% up that requires you to be in the Vocal position. This has a 20% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a Vocal Dance Visual 40% up that requires the full Illumination Star setup. This means that Mono, Meguru, and Hiyori must be performing on stage for a chance of this passive to activate. It has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a +100 to Vocal, and her 4-star appeal applies a 30% Vocal buff for 3 turns after a Vocal 3.0 appeal, and also applies a Dance and Visual 15% buff for 3 turns. Her event passive is a Vocal Dance Visual 15% buff that requires you to be in the Vocal position, and has a 10% chance to activate twice. Meguru earns an A+ to an S+ depending on where you run her. Meguru makes a very strong argument to be one of the best supports to re-roll for once she is officially added to the permanent pool. A lot of her power shines most with Illumination Stars and signals a pretty neat change for team building going forward. While it might end up being potentially broken when other teams eventually get cards like this, Meguru is the facelift Illumination Stars specifically have been asking for. I would give her a moderate to high recommendation to pull for. If you like Meguru, if you're a fan of Valentine's, or especially if you're an Illumination Stars producer, I definitely recommend pulling for her. She is a permanent though, so she may come around eventually anyway. Lastly, we have our Event SR, Madoka. Valentine's Day Madoka is a carbon copy of Relaxin' Chiyuki we talked about with Fuyuko 3, aside from being visual over dance. And that's pretty much just in regard to the support skills on the right. If anything, the most notable thing about this Madoka is her -10% Judge Influence debuff through her 4-star appeal. Might be a pretty helpful card in Collabofest's visual stage, depending on if you feel you take too much damage sometimes. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Trouble Guard, and her unique support skill is Visual Mastery Visual, reaching +5 at level 65. Her TFD idea is Visual, and her Insight token for Grad is Vocal. Madoka's 1-star passive is a Visual 12% up that requires you to be in the visual position. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a Visual 20% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or earlier. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a Visual uncap of +50, and her 4-star appeal is a Visual 2.3 that reduces the judge's influence by 10% for 3 turns. Remember that Judge Influence means their attack damage against you, so reducing their damage by 10% can be useful to help you survive some scary turns. Her event passive is a Visual 8% up that requires Madoka on your team, and it has a 30% chance to activate twice. Madoka earns a C. Competition is incredibly steep, as Madoka already has a visual support that provides way more for her team than this card ever could. The story is good, and her influence down may help you survive the later stages of Collabofest, since reducing judge damage by 10% is greatly appreciated. Otherwise, she's purely a filler SR support for Nocchill, and you might as well farm for her while she's around. And that'll do it for the video today. Thank you so much as always for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to share it around, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Helps us get more information out there to people that need it for shiny colors. Next time we'll be talking about whatever banner comes next. Look forward to seeing what it could be. Till next time, I've been Cho. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.